Shall we get started? Is that all right? So this is really helpful for me as well, because with Cross Country Magazine we write articles and we want to know kind of what's going to be most helpful. So please just do ask any question at all. I may not know the answer, but someone in the room might. There's a couple of more experienced people than me in here, so I might be drawing on you as well, if that's okay. All right, okay. Let's start off with just thinking about how we are learning, and it can be quite demanding, and bandwidth, because I guess that affects us all wherever we're at. And there's one quite useful model to have in mind with this, which is the Yerkes-Dobson model. And that pen doesn't work very well.
I tested them all out this time.
Well, you didn't do it very well, sorry. So basically, that's a sort of curve that, and if this up here is performance here, how well you can do a task, and this is the sort of stress level. It basically says that as you start, the stress goes up, and then it kind of goes really, really high, and then you're hang on, this is the wrong way around.
It's the wrong way around.
So its performance is here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. So performance there, stress there. So as the stress increases, your performance at the start gets better, but then if it gets too high, it really drops off. So I can relate to this because I've been learning to glide, and if I get with a sailplane, it's all quite nice and easier in the air, but when you get close to the ground, it all starts getting quite quick, and you have to really think about setting up your approach and getting the right speed and making sure there's no traffic, and the workload suddenly increases. And if I've flown for 3 or 4 hours and I'm already tired, then I'm going to be kind of up here, and I have to be really mindful of that. And I know I need to land when my brain gets full. So are you all able to tap into that? Do you know when you're getting a bit full and your mind is starting to get a little bit overloaded and not probably be able to help you as you'd like it to? Yeah. So I think that's just a natural thing. Lots of pilots who are learning to fly cross country will say that after 2 or 3 hours of flying, they just can't do any more. They can't take any more on. And that's okay. It's all right to accept that 2 to 3 hours is your limit, or an hour's your limit, and then to find a safe place to land. So I think we just have to be mindful that our heads can only do so much when we're learning a new thing, and we all learn at different rates. Yeah, so it's okay to accept when you are completely... What are your signals when you are kind of at that point of you can't do much more?
I stop having fun.
Yeah, stop having fun, yeah. Yeah.
And do you find that's on the ground or in the air?
In the air. Normally like at the dike or something, and you've gone out and there weren't that many people and everyone's all around you, and suddenly it feels really hard to work out where to put yourself and how to avoid people.
Yeah.
That's rational fear.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot's talked about sort of, you know, pushing away fear and rationalising things, but there's also the whole sense that you just can't do much more because you're at this stage of your flying career, wherever that is, and that's just how it is, and that's okay. So yeah, just give yourself a break basically on that. Is that fear sorted? I mean, also you can do all the rational things. You can look at, you know, the rating of your carabiner, look at the testing protocol, all the rest of it, and you know, obviously rationalise fears as they come up. I'm not discounting that, but I'm just saying that we only have so much bandwidth. Okay. So, can I talk about my spin? What happened when I sort of crashed? So I was flying, it was September, 6 years ago, and I'd flown a lot that year. I was flying an Enzo 3 most of the year, and then I switched onto this other glider just to try it out. And it was a very light day, so there wasn't much wind coming up the hill. You had to punt off into a thermal, and saw the wind slightly start to improve. So I took off, and I went out in front of the hill, and I went into a turn, and felt okay, but I didn't feel like I was going around very quickly. And then another pilot launched towards me. I thought I'd better tighten up here, and then I just started dropping, and went into the hill, and I didn't PLF, I didn't have time, but I sort of fell over sideways and I didn't do myself an injury. And I was really puzzled by it because I hadn't noticed that the glider was spinning. I was stood on the ground going, what happened there? And I hadn't had that experience before. The other times I've gone into a spin, I've recognised it, something's changed in the brake pressure, and I've been able to recover. But this time it all happened quite quickly, and I wasn't really aware of what was going on. So can you help me pick apart what happened from that description? Like what? Yeah.
You're focusing on the other person too much.
Yeah,
so
I definitely was.
So you didn't notice the change in the brake?
Yeah, that's definitely probably true.
How much had you flown the end zone?
Loads. This was a different glider, so it was an ENC,
Oh,
but
I see.
I wasn't used to it, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Are you going somewhere with that question about?
Well,
New
even like
glider.
the brake length and,
Yeah.
and I mean the dyke will know well, but
Yeah.
like changing variables and things like that, and the
Yeah,
brake travel and the end zone has very long brakes, doesn't it?
yes.
So it probably hit the spin point at a much
Yes.
higher point.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So new glider, avoiding other traffic. Anything else?
You were hungover.
I don't think I was. No.
Surprised.
Yeah.
Could it be partly because it was the dyke and you were a full sense of security?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I was familiar with it, yeah. So a friend, Marcus, a friend of ours, crashed in September, and he span in at his home site just on a hike and fly. Just, yeah, very familiar to the site, very benign conditions. Yeah.
Did you fall out the back of the thermal?
Possibly. So it was a sort of fairly high pressure day. We can talk a bit about that, yeah.
How are you feeling that afternoon?
Really fine, confident,
No,
all right.
Not tired?
No, not tired at all, no, yeah.
Were you to the left of the stress curve that you drawn on your...
I probably was, yeah. I probably was. I was probably
Not stressed?
not stressed at all, yeah.
Not stressed enough.
Yeah, not stressed enough or not thinking enough, yeah, maybe, yeah. Oh, we're unpicking it. Oh, it's a
You've
mystery,
gone
isn't
from
it?
an end
Ooh.
zone to a C, so you feel
Yeah.
like it's almost impossible that something could go wrong because you're so within your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe I was like just manhandling it a bit.
You weren't looking at your wing.
I was not looking at my wing as well. Yeah, I definitely was not looking at my wing. I can't remember looking at my wing. I remember looking at the hill quite a lot. But yeah, not the wing. Yeah. Okay. Anything particular about the conditions, like light wind, doing a 360 low down?
So if you've got light wind, you could have very low airspeed across your wing anyways.
Got the same airspeed, but light winds, I guess you've got less ground speed, yeah, so you may think that you can get it round more tightly, yeah. Yeah, okay. So yeah, for me, you've got it all. So these are things to watch out for. If it's a light wind day and you're thermaling close to the hill, make sure you're really familiar with your spin point of your glider. We were just chatting before, the range to stall on certification is between 45 and 70 centimetres, which if you get out a tape measure, it's nowhere near the normal brake travel of most gliders. Is that right, Ross? And most gliders, you can bring your arm down almost and lock it out, and you'll start to feel it go somewhere around there.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
ENA and ENB type wings, yeah,
Yeah.
it's normally 60 plus.
Yeah.
But ENA wings can get to like 80 centimetres. But that's artificial. That's nothing to do with thermaling and thermic air on a hill with gradients of wind and sink and all of those other factors, and also the relationship between you and the roll and so on, and how much energy the wing has got. So those brake ranges are set in certification in calm air and dead straight flight. So they're kind of meaningless numbers,
Yeah.
to be honest,
Okay.
other than to give you a rough idea of how long a brake travel is relative to another wing.
Yeah. I guess the key thing is if you're changing wings, do some ground handling and get really familiar with where the stall and spin point is before you even take off. Paragliders are one of the very few aircraft we can fly pretty much, on the ground, and everyone goes on about ground handling, but it really is, ground handling hours count almost as much as flying hours for that reason, that you're tuning in your responses to the glider as it moves. So yeah, it'd be really, I should have done that and I didn't. It was a light wind day. I was feeling confident. I was to the left of the curve, I was on my own. What could go wrong? And also, I didn't know what the feeling would be when I reached the stall point when I flew. So I went into the first turn, had to tighten it up, and round it went.
And did it actually let go into a spin? It actually rotated on you?
No, it just sort of.
Or the
dropped in.
sync rate increased massively, and you just plopped in before feeling that rotation.
Yeah, it didn't go light at all. There was no change in brake pressure.
You don't have it on video.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Has anyone had any experiences of getting too close to the hill in your kind of first few weeks or years of, yeah? Okay, you're like, yeah.
Usually because people shove me onto it. Like if they're coming, I had a person coming up to me at Caber, and then I was expecting them to, follow the rules and turn right and give me right away. But I think nobody had been flying for ages. It was just after winter, so he was a bit like, don't know which way to go. Yeah. So then I got shoved into the hill, and I had to make a very quick landing.
Yeah. Okay. Is everyone confident with kind of joining climbs? Let's say you're heading out to a pilot who's thermaling. How should you join?
Like you're joining a roundabout.
Like you're joining a roundabout, yeah. So can I have a volunteer? Mark and I did this. Oh, 2 volunteers. I want you to be going thermaling, just walking around the room and. Yeah, brilliant.
So I be thermaling?
Yeah, brilliant. So if you two are opposite each other and just go round in a circle, a little bit further, but that's it. So if I'm joining, I'm kind of going, just waiting here, and then I'm slotting in from the outside in, okay? And then we're all nicely positioned. You carry on. If I go to the incoming where we're doing 60 k's an hour, well, that's dangerous. So I don't want to do that. Keep going. One more. And if I go right into the middle, then someone's going to have to take avoiding action pretty quickly. Yeah? So it's like joining a roundabout, but just hedge your bets and go on the outside if you can. And quite often, if you go on the outside, as you get to the upwind edge, you'll find stronger lift anyway. So it's not a bad thing. And then feed in that way, and off you go.
Can I ask a small person a question?
Yeah.
So you were saying the other day when I was flying, like my wing's really tiny, so that if I ever learn to thermal decently, then I will be like could be potentially in the middle. Like, how do you get out?
So how do you get out if you're in the middle?
You just keep going up forever.
You should, unless you're in a competition gaggle where everyone is kind of locked in and there may be a time when you can't get out of your pattern, you should always be able to escape. If you're starting to feel blocked in and you're not comfortable, then get out. But you'll have this roughly the same turning radius as everyone else. It doesn't really matter about the size of your wing too much. Even if there is a bit of a difference, people can adjust. So if a comp wing's got a wider turning circle than a E and B, then they'll generally end up matching each other. Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about your inner thermal and how you managed to somehow just come up through everyone? I remember looking down. I was nearly at cloud base. I looked down. You were like on the floor, and then literally within maybe 10 minutes you were right up with everyone else. And just
why don't you watch a video?
Yeah.
So this is nothing to do with, well, it's a kettle, it's a boiling kettle basically. But when I was thinking about this talk, I thought, well, how can I explain a few things? And this is just sort of showing. Is this going to say? Right, here we go. So this is a slow motion video of steam coming out of the kettle. And I think basically that's pretty much a thermal, right? So you've got a very tight neck at the bottom, and you've got bubbles coming out as well. And then as it gets higher, it starts to spread out and get wider and wider. Yeah? Has everyone got a sort of fairly good feel for what a thermal is and what it looks like? Or is it all a bit of a mystery? It's a bit of a mystery. A bit of a mystery, okay. We'll just boil your kettle and video it and see what happens. I guess... Should I do some more drawing? Yeah. Is that going to wipe that off then? I've got some tissue paper. So, thermals. Has everyone sort of climbed up in thermals a little bit? Not really yet. Okay. But it's going to be a treat.
Tried.
Yeah. Have you tried? So what's happened when you've tried? Have you been out on a day when other people have been climbing out, or?
Yeah, the Dunstable. Yeah, people were climbing out in a cycle. I went over to the bowl. Probably slightly below ridge height. Started trying to search out in front.
Yeah.
Saw some people starting to do 360s as I was just sort of getting above ridge height. Joined and probably managed like 1 or 2 thermaling circles, and then probably misjudged it. Ended up just outside the thermal, and on that particular day I was surprised by the met flow coming, I think, round the hill in a funny sort of way, and just ended up in horrible sink. Either it was the sink on the outside of a little thermal bubble, or coming down terrain. And that was the bit where I just started, like, you know, just going down vertically towards bottom landing.
Yeah.
And I guess what I should have done is turn around downwind and try and soar back up the main ridge.
Possibly. I mean, Dunstable's really low.
It's little, yeah.
I mean, Dunstable, you're talking about, let's say cloud base is 4,000 feet. That's Dunstable. It's tiny. So, I mean, glider pilots are just, they're amazed at what we do, that we fly from these tiny little hills. I mean, if they get below sort of there, they're looking for landings, really. The fact that we scratch about with birds and try and climb out from these tiny hills just it blows their minds. Someone said to me yesterday, a couple of days ago, they went, I got down to 700 feet and I got up. And I was like, well, that's higher than most of the hills we fly, you know. So what are thermals doing down here? They're very, very small generally. And if you think about how thermals start off life, they start as a sort of pool of warm air, yeah? And it's only when there's a trigger, they get hot enough to want to punch up through the colder air, and there's a trigger that forces them to do so. That could be the wind blowing them onto the ridge. They do what this, I love the phrase Baptiste uses, déclenchement. Release, they're declenched from the land, and up they go. So what you're doing is you're jumping off here and you're scrabbling about when one of these tiny little bubbles comes up, and just as in we saw with the kettle, it's probably a very, very narrow, I'm taking a really tiny drawing here, it's not
I was just thinking, you draw a little bit bigger.
Yeah. I haven't done this before with a whiteboard, alright? Usually I stand behind a PowerPoint and just, you know. So let's say that's the pool of air, and you see a few birds circling about, and they're quite low down and they're scrubbing about, and you see some grass start to move, and then you see some pilots starting to thermal. They're probably in a very, very tiny little column or bubble. Okay, so the first thing is when you're starting to learn, you haven't developed the senses yet required to tell you what the air is doing. As you get better, you will learn to interpret how your wing gets pulled into thermals and what it does when it arrives in a thermal. Sometimes it'll accelerate, and that's because, and I didn't understand this a month ago, if you move into a thermal, the air's now coming up, so the wing dives forward to compensate, to accelerate into that flow, and you can feel that energy, and then it might get knocked back a bit because you're at the mercy of pitch, and off you go. So whilst listening to the vario is important, it doesn't tell you half the picture. Probably low down, it's a tiny part of the picture. So as you get more experience, you'll get to learn how. That's a bit of a cop-out, isn't it? There's no magic secret, though. I guess it's just you learn to feel what the air's doing as you develop. And then as you get higher, and this might play into France versus the UK and why the UK is harder perhaps at times than France. The air, they call it necking in gliding, so it's like a neck, and then it starts getting bigger and wider until it forms, that's the wrong place, the cloud. So if you're taking off a mountain up here, you're going into a much better formed thermal that's wider, it's more consistent, and it's, you know, several thousands of cubic, I don't know, whatever they are, going up. It's a huge amount, it's a huge mass. Down here, it's little plumes, so there's a few different plumes contributing to that big thermal. Does that make sense? So, if you, it's quite common, especially so at Sharpenhole, a very, very small site like Dunstable. Have you flown it?
No, I haven't piloted yet.
Okay. It's very common to, one pilot takes off, I've got a picture of Sharpenhole there, one pilot takes off, scratches along the trees, stays up, the next pilot takes off, goes to the bottom. That's how critical it is in terms of those little plumes coming off. But it's an amazing thing. I mean, when you think about what we're doing and the fact that we can take off on these tiny hills and circle away, it's pretty incredible. So the reward will be immense when you unlock it.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Should we talk a bit about how, this might be a good segue into how the ridges around here kind of work, and we can see one, which is brilliant. So how thermals might work on Sussex ridges? Yeah. Okay. Can I pick on someone again? Quite sorry, I'm making you do all the work. But has anyone got away, anyone low airtime got away from a hill from the dyke or foal or ditchling?
Di flew home the other day.
Di, brilliant.
Poor Di.
Sorry. Can I ask you, like, just where did you climb out from? Can you describe where you took off and where you went?
Bo Peak
Bo
was
Peak,
the
yeah.
first one.
Yeah.
And it was, there was a trigger point that I found that I kept going back to, and I went up a couple of times and sort of pushed out and then went low and then managed to stay in it. I didn't get very high the first time, but then I just went downwind and landed at Seaford, and then same from high and over really, which is a very similar distance.
Nice.
But yeah, it was good. But they felt very narrow, especially recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And can you remember whereabouts on the ridge the trigger point was? Because that is the key.
Yes. On Bo Peak, it was kind of like more where the sort of spine was, I guess, right at the end.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I kept going back to. I did try and follow Martin, but no, it's not. He went that way and I went down.
Right, I've got my map. Go that far. I want to be accurate. So you were at the spine of Bo Peep.
On the very right-hand side,
Yeah.
the little sort of where the actual landing field, where the horses normally are.
So it does that, doesn't it? And then that's the sort of the bowl, and then there's this bit here.
Yeah, it's a very, very smooth.
That's the car park.
Definitive.
Yeah. That's a bit accentuated, right? Okay. And if we did some graduations like that. So you were climbing up from about here? Okay. And then you tracked, so it went like that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Brilliant, that proves my theory, thank you. So, air, it doesn't matter if it's high pressure or low pressure. If air is being pinched through, it will generally descend. That's just what air does. Air is heavy, it generally doesn't want to go up. So if you're in a bowl, it might be brilliant for ridge soaring in winter, but it won't be great for climbing out from with thermals in summer, because air, and this is a gliding coach talked about this a few weeks ago. Air will generally accelerate and descend through pinch points, and it will collect and declench around splitting points. So on a ridge, we're looking for the places that aren't great for ridge soaring. We're looking for the sort of splitting points where the air that's collected here comes to this point and whoop, has to release. Do you all know about the sort of the theory where you have you look at the landscape, you pour honey on it and you turn it upside down and you look for where it releases. So you're familiar with that concept. So it's sort of, when I started thermaling, I couldn't understand it because clearly, through soaring, the best lift is right in the bowl, isn't it? That's where you stay up, where it's steepest and it works really well. But then you see pilots kind of climbing further out, maybe here or here, and you think, oh, I'm not brave enough to go there because they'll drop out, and you know. But then you start to learn to feel what the wing is doing and where it's pulling you, and seeing what the bird's doing, and that's when you start getting a bit braver at pushing out and finding the rising air. The same is that's bow peep. It also works very well here, sort of between the two takeoffs, I guess would be the way of describing it. So you'll be soaring along and you get the lift around here. And that's when you get into the lift here, that's the time to then push out to see if there's anything else. Have a little explore, if not, come back. Yeah. Any questions on that?
Which sites, there was a question somebody asked earlier about which are the best sites for us to start trying to learn the thermal at in the southern.
Any answers to that?
Not high and over.
Not high and over, why not?
It's scary.
Yeah, it is scary, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. I guess.
I was going to say that's seemed like recently it's been more inconsistent to places like that in terms of like trying to figure out where it's triggering.
Yeah.
It's been quite different, and like I say, it's been very narrow, like almost like literal bubbles, like very small.
Yeah, and we've got these lovely long ridges. So if it's northerly, we've got a choice of 3 ridges. So we've got Furl, Ditchling, and the Dyke. And I guess when you've got more spread, you'll have less pilots in each hill. If it's northwesterly at the Dyke, I say that's probably not the ideal place to go if you're trying to go XC for the first time. If it's going to be a crowded bank holiday Monday, you're better off going to Coombe Gibbet or go inland, go to Haybluff, just go and explore, because you'll have you'll be higher. You won't have the sea breeze coming in and killing everything at one. So the extra drive is probably worth it if you want to. But on a northerly day, then I think probably the Dyke and Furl are great for learning to get away from. They're better than Ditchling, and my theory is they're better than Ditchling because I think for some reason Ditchling just doesn't work very, very well. It doesn't work as well as the other 2 sites. My theory, I'm willing to be disproved, it's due to the soil moisture, because soil moisture has a very big effect on thermal quality. If the sun has to heat up a field which is moist, then there's a lot of energy going into turning that moisture from water into gas, and that sucks the energy out of the thermal production. So to get a nice strong thermal, you've got a nice dry surface that the sun's heating. I don't know if that's true or not, but again, talking to glider pilots, we were saying that it's always quite difficult kind of leaving the Cotswolds and going down towards Swindon and Hungerford, and then after Hungerford it gets better. So Mark and I were talking to a glider pilot, and he said, well, yeah, it's the soil. It goes from clay to sort of a nice chalky flinty soil at Hungerford, and that's why it's better. So there's clearly quite a lot we can learn from that.
Are you suggesting swapping out our air charts for soil maps?
Have you not put it already on? It should be there. So yeah, Ditchling's not ideal. I don't know if it's because of the soil moisture or what, but it's not the easiest site to get away from. Yeah.
What about if you're prepared to get in your vehicle and travel anywhere in the UK? What would be your top tip?
Okay, so
happy thermaling sites.
Yeah. So best places to learn to thermal. How far are you prepared to go?
I've got a tent in the car.
Yeah, you got a tent. Great. Okay.
Coombe's a good one.
Coombe, yeah. The Mind. I mean, yeah, just go and explore. There's so many amazing sites. South East Wales, just base yourself there for a few days. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really jealous that you've got all these new places to discover and explore. That's great. I mean, there are some sites you're using others. So let's think about what we're looking for, right? So let's think. So if you're going to go to the Cotswolds and fly Selsley or Froster, that kind of area, I say they're more demanding. The reason is Selsley has a big line of trees at the bottom of it, and that tends to trigger the thermals before they actually get to the hill. Same Coombe has a line of trees, so it's a light wind day. Coombe's not great. So I'd just say go for the biggest hill you can get to where it looks good. South East Wales is probably a good bet. Milk Hill is, yeah, again, it's okay. It's probably a bit more technical because it's a shallower slope. It requires a bit more commitment in terms of sniffing out and finding the thermal low down. Malverns is great, yeah. Yeah, Malverns is nice and big.
Malverns is a one shot, isn't it? You're not going to slow down on the Malverns.
If it's like wind, yeah. But it's a big one shot and it works really well. Very dry town below it. There you go. Sorry, missed it.
Hay Bluff is a nice shot.
Hay Bluff, yeah. Yeah, you can't go any South East Wales sites. You can't go wrong with. Yeah.
Before you get in the car and start driving, can you walk us through your forecasting process? What do you look at first? What do you then look at next?
Okay. Yeah, sure.
You just call every position.
So, yeah. Well, it's a minefield, isn't it? I mean, I guess I look at SkySight and RASP. I think SkySight is kind of winning over RASP at the moment for me because it's using a model that's updated more frequently. RASP is GFS and it hasn't really been tinkered with for 10 years. So further out, RASP seems a bit less reliable than SkySight. RASP also gets really... Do you know what RASP is? Yeah, okay. RASP is like a free program developed by a glider pilot several years ago. It hasn't really been played around with for a while. SkySight you do have to pay for, but it's it's constantly updated. And Matthew, the developer, spends quite a lot of time in the UK gliding here, so he's very familiar with UK conditions as well as the Alps and Australia.
What's the name as well?
SkySight.
SkySight.
Yeah, but really, if you're learning to thermal, I wouldn't worry too much about it. About looking for a really good day, you want to be going out on all the days you can and flying as much as you can, and as much as you can, trying to form your own view, because I think of it as a bit like testing out a hypothesis. So if you say, right, I want to go and thermal to 3,000 feet. Then you think, right, what's the hill I need to do that? Let's read the site guide, let's look it up properly, let's think about the wind conditions, maybe ask a local pilot for their views, but try and form your own view and your own plan for the day, and then you've got something to check in against. If you just jump in the car with someone who's already got a plan, you won't know what to expect, and a lot of the preparation work is actually really helps you flying, because you'll be on the hill and you'll be thinking, okay, well I've looked at SkySight, I know the trigger temperature is X, that's going to happen about 11:30, so I need to get to the site for 10, and then see if it comes true or not. Yeah.
So would you say that some wind directions are sort of more willing? For example, southwesterlies round to northerlies, fluffy cumulus, there is willing. Easterlies all the way around to, northerly all the way around to southeasterly, it's not generally as nice. It'll do it, but it's not as pleasant. Would you agree?
Yeah, so Tom Bradbury wrote, he sort of said what proportion of good days at Lasham were relating to different wind directions based on that theory. But then we had this epic southerly day in, I think, 30th of March with a 5 grand base, and it was as good as any northerly day. So it's more to do with the air mass and where the air is coming from. So if it's an air mass that's coming from a nice cold dry place, doesn't matter if it's coming from the north, the northeast, or it's coming round and up from the south. And the trouble with the forecast now is you don't really get that picture. You need to look at the synoptics to see what the air's doing. So it's a good idea. You can sign up to the Met Office aviation briefing for free, and that'll give you all the synoptics if you're really interested in that. And then that helps you pick out a bit more of the detail, because RASP will just go yellow, orange, red, and that's not really enough for us, particularly paraglider pilots, because it's a gliding forecast, and for a red day they want a really high base because they don't like landing out. So we don't mind having a 3-4 grand base, that's fine, but that will never make a RASP red day. It'll be a yellow at best. So don't just don't bin the yellow star days. Should we talk a bit more about that though, different air masses and how they feel different? Because I guess this comes back to my spinning incident as well. So it was a September day, it was quite high pressure. So what do thermals generally do low down when the air's more stable and the air's generally sinking? Do you know how they feel?
They don't want to let go, do they? They're rougher. They don't want to go. They're forced to go by the heat rather than willing to, you know. Pop.
Yeah. Has everyone felt the difference between a sort of high pressure-y day and a lower pressure day?
Grumpy, aren't they?
They're grumpy, yeah. They're
Well,
grumpy.
it's high and over, isn't it? High and over, midsummer, 30 degrees. Don't bother. You know, you're going to get roughed up.
Yeah. And that could be because the sea air has just come in and it's just making everything stable. If you imagine, so I'm not going to go into SKUT because I don't really understand them properly, but SKUT captures the dew point and the temperature. So if it's something like that and it's low pressure, then we know the air is willing and wants to go up, and there's a nice temperature gradient and off it goes. If it's more kind of like that, and we know there's an inversion, then we know that it's going to be a sticky, pretty horrible day. So an inversion is where it's created by the air getting warmer as it goes up, or not getting colder, and that stops a parcel of air going up. So you don't really need to understand SKUTs, but you just need to understand that if it's like a nice cold air mass, then the air is generally cold. So if the sun gets one bit of ground really hot, then it will rise up like a balloon through a swimming pool. It'll just want to go. Whereas if it's a stable day and the air is generally descending, it's like loads of hair dryers trying to stop that balloon from going up and blowing down on it. So the balloon's sort of doing this, and the effect when you're trying to thermally one of those is it doesn't want you in it, so it will try and kick you out. It'll be more like a rodeo ride trying to stay on a bucking bronco, which may turn you into the hill quicker than you expect. So if you're going round and it's a stable day, just be really careful that you don't get pushed towards the hill. Yeah.
What about the technicalities of how you're thermaling in terms of your weight shift, brake pressure, using the outside brake, not using the outside brake?
What should you do? You tell me. I don't know.
He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'm here to learn.
So am I. What should you be doing when you're thermaling?
Well, I've always thought that you could afford to bank the glider over more if you're in the strong part of the thermal.
Yeah.
And you can keep it flatter if it's weaker or you're on the outside. Is that also your thinking?
I think quite a lot gets made of how you fly the wing, and actually in a competition gaggle, so many pilots have such different styles in flying, and they're doing all kinds of things with weight shift or brake. I think it's probably more to do with just keeping the wing in the right bit of air. So I don't think it's necessarily, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, but I don't think it's critically important. As long as you're controlling the pitch and being safe and you're not letting the glider dive adversely, and you're keeping it where you want it to be and you're not getting near the spin point, I think you develop a feel for it. And people have different styles. Some people don't weight shift at all, especially with new competition harnesses. It's very hard to weight shift, so they're much more reliant on using their brakes, and they have to adapt to that and learn how to keep the wing engaged. Other people, weight shift a lot and use little bits of outside brake. Yeah.
Efficiency is the key. Is keeping the wing turning efficiently. And one thing that Wagger told me years ago, and I've always used it as a mantra, is that it's better to be inefficient in strong lift than efficient in weak lift.
Yeah.
So meaning that you can bank it and you can wang it more in the stronger lift to keep the wing in the stronger lift,
Yeah.
even if you're slightly less efficient because you're banked over, than being with the wing perfectly efficient above your head but not in the core.
Do modern gliders have more arc though? Does that mean that then you can bank them more and there's still more wing that's flying? You're not...
yeah, but the same rules apply irrespective of the exact...
So that doesn't
arc.
give you an advantage in a kind of inefficient turn that they are more arced?
No, you're always advantaged. The longer you keep the wing in the strong part of the lift, the better you're going to fly.
Yeah, but what I mean is in terms of could you... Is there less of...
The modern wings climb better
is there
at
less
high bank angles than old-fashioned wings. Is that what you mean?
But, no, but what I mean is that partly because they have more arc, so therefore they're more forgiving of you doing a banked turn than an older wing which would have been at more of an angle, if you see what I mean? There's more of a...
Yeah,
like,
you'll have more sync rate with modern wings, but that's probably more to do with the smoothness of the profile rather than the arc itself. The arc itself will make a small difference in that sense, but there are other factors like line drag and sail drag which I think are probably more relevant to that.
So something I noticed years ago was we'd be flying along. There were two particular situations where I'm looking at two pilots thermaling, and one of them is doing 2 360s to the other pilot's every one. And they've climbed up the slope at exactly the same rate. So the guy doing 2 360s, he's right in there, he's giving it loads, he's circling, he's going around. But the other guy's just having a nice time. And the other guy can use that nice, relaxed time to look at other stuff, to take other information in. Yeah, he's not going around, he's not going like video, he can look around, birds over there, he can take in... Is this the tortoise and the hare, isn't it? I think it does vary, but sometimes you do need to bank it up. But I think it's probably more important to be able to take information in from elsewhere than make sure you're on it, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you're in a glider, you sort of think you're in the core, but you're somewhere here, and that's because your arc is so much wider. If you ever fly with gliders, you'll sort of be here, right in the centre, and this glider will be going around you, and it won't be climbing as fast. You'll be out climbing it. So if you think about that as graded, the lift gets stronger near the core. So if your climb rate suffers a bit because you're over at 45 degrees, well, that's more than compensated by the increased climb rate. That's just, so if someone's doing a wider 360 around you and you're getting in the cores and climbing up fast, it's the same maths.
How do you find the core?
How do you find the core?
How do you know you're in the core?
Well, with cross country, we put out one of those, 4-second rules where you fly into the lift, you wait for 4 seconds, and if you're still lifting, you turn. And if you're really new to thermaling, I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb, right? So 16 seconds to go round roughly. So if you're flying here and if you're not thermaling high enough, do a 360 and just count 1,000, 2,000 as you go around, and just see how quick your 360s are. If they're like 16 to 18 seconds, then you're about right. And then when you go into thermal, try the same. And obviously have the outside brake released enough to get it round. So yeah, and then I guess the things to look out for is as you enter the thermal, there are little gusts and eddies going out from it because the air's coming up through. It's a different air mass going up. So as this air mass meets the one around it, there are little ripples and eddies, and that might be a bit turbulent. It also can provoke your vario to make a noise which sounds like lift but probably isn't. It's not the core. So that's why you have to develop the skill of understanding and feeling what your glider's doing, because early on you may find yourself hitting that bit and turning too early. Yeah. And that happens for glider pilots too. They have total energy varios, but even still, they get affected by the wind. So they're developing these systems that compensate for the wind and cancel that out. That's particularly true on high pressure days, because, as Mark said, the air doesn't want to rise, so it's swirling about, spinning around.
So, sorry, I'm going to have to come up to your drawing board.
Here we go. Who is this guy? Yeah.
So, just a question. So, the core of the thermal's here. You obviously don't know it's there. You're gliding in.
Yeah.
What do you think is best? To do this and just wait, and then come out the other side. You can feel it drop and then come round and start working in on it. Or do you come in and go, I've counted my 4 seconds, I'm going to circle here. So you're actually not in the best bit. You haven't waited until it's slackened off. But if you keep doing this, you can open up a little bit on each one, and each time the vario bleeps a little bit more. Would you say that is better, or do you glide through and find the other side and then come back?
Okay. All right. Let's. Yeah, that's a good question. Let's go back to being low down and trying to find thermals and see how that applies to that. I need some tissue, babe.
Sorry, I made a right mess of it.
That's what Kelly says in his book. You do this opening
yeah, I mean, if you're an easy rule of thumb is if you're going up at 1.5 meters all the way round, then stay in it. If you see someone climbing better, go over to them. So use your visual reference, whether that's a bird, another pilot, whatever. Open up your turn and go out to them. I'd say that if you want a simple rule of thumb, that's not bad. Go into the climb, wait 4 seconds, turn. 1 to 1.5, stay with it. If someone's climbing better, get over to them. But when we're low down, it's a really good point, because let's go back to our sort of side-on drawing. Let's say that's the dike, and you've got the initial plume coming up here. And I don't know. This is how what it feels like. So you've got the first pilots climbing out here. If there's some wind, and you've seen some pilots starting to climb, then the likelihood is that whatever the air is underneath that's feeding that will probably produce another couple of plumes. So generally, if you're this pilot, you'll always be looking out ahead, upwind, to see if anyone's climbing better. And if they are, get to them. Because this climb might not be the one, as in when you saw the kettle, the steam coming out, it might not make it all the way up, but the one just upwind is more likely to. Yeah? So if you're in a climb low down and someone starts going up better, upwind of you, in particular, go to them. Once you're up to about 2,000 feet, or 1,500 feet above the hill, if people are climbing better to the side or downwind, then you go for them too. But low down, keep your eye upwind generally, especially in wind, because you'll likely, with a number of pilots here, you'll likely see the first pilot climb in the first bit and then keep going.
Hugh, for pilots who are looking to progress generally, then do you think it's better to be like always setting yourself new targets and trying to do new things and pushing it, or should you be trying to like really consolidate where you're at?
I don't know.
Make up an answer and say it with authority.
Okay. Make a goal and do it, achieve it, and fulfill your self-worth. Depends what you like about flying. If you like kind of learning more and getting better, then setting yourself goals is great, isn't it? Because you've got something to work towards.
You could set yourself times to be in the sky, couldn't you? Like today, I'm going to fly for at least 2 hours.
And what you're talking about there is more of a what Thomas Thoriak calls a mastery goal rather than performance goal. So it's a goal based on you mastering a skill, i.e. being in the air, just staying off the ground, rather than achieving a 50 kilometre flight or a 100 kilometre flight, which is more dependent on the conditions of the day, or beating other people. It depends on other people. So yeah, or just flying and land. Like we said earlier, if you're starting to feel full up and like your bandwidth is full, then setting a goal of always landing pretty much when you're still having fun. I would say would be a good goal. Yeah. What kind of small goals do you think would be helpful, like where you're at with?
I don't know, I'm wondering more, so for lots of the pilots who are starting to do cross country, it feels almost like it's getting quite competitive, and I wonder if that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether people are going to be pushing beyond what they're like safe doing and what they're confident doing, or whether it's good that everyone's pushing each other, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous sport. You've got to be responsible for you. That's it. You're responsible for you. Nobody else. Don't let anybody else push you. But if you want to do well, you need to be competitive, and you need to be doing it and spending as much time as possible in the air. But it's down to you. If you get broken, it hurts for a long time.
Isn't it more dangerous bridge soaring on the dyke on a busy day than it is going cross country on your own in open airspace?
Yeah, I don't think there's a particular danger in thermaling out from a hill and going downwind.
There's not a particular danger in cross country.
There are two things that will hurt you: the ground and other pilots. It's not being at 4,000 feet. So you might have the irrational fear of being high, and looking at your carabiners, but we know that's irrational. The being on the dyke on a bank holiday Monday is what will likely hurt. And I mean, sadly, looking at the accident statistics, I think you're 5 times more likely to have an accident at the dyke than any other site in the UK.
Oh, is it still busy?
Yeah, particularly mid-airs. We're particularly good at having mid-airs at the dyke. Understandably, because we're in the southeast of England and it's the only kind of northwesterly site, apart from Butser Hill. But
while we're on busy sites then, I've ridiculously signed up for a comp in the summer. Any top tips on the start?
Russell.
Martin.
Back to you.
No, all you have to do when you do a competition is just go fly. Don't put any other pressure on yourself whatsoever. Obviously, you've got to be able to deal with the traffic, and you have to have your thermal etiquette has to be correct. But other than that, just go fly, and enjoy it for what it is. Enjoy the spectacle of all the people. You're going to have your eyes peeled open, just to stop avoiding people. But the aim is to be top dog. Is to always be as dominant as you can be. Always to be at the top. Take off early. Get up there. And once you're up and above people, you can then see the strongest climbs coming from underneath, and try and maintain yourself near the top of the gaggle. And then when the start, because normally you have a window of like an hour before the start, and you can't really stay super focused for an hour. Well, you kind of have to, because there's people everywhere. But I always give myself a 20-minute warning before the start, or with 20 minutes to go. That's when I kind of switch on, and start thinking about it. And with 10 minutes to go, I'm really focused to not get out of position. So the aim is to not get out of position. And normally you get out of position because you have a clever idea that nobody else has thought about, with 15 minutes to go before the race start. And often that clever idea is not a clever idea. And you end up exposing yourself, flying off in a different direction with no one around you. You end up getting low. And with 5 minutes to go, you come scrabbling back to where you just were at the top with everyone, and you're at the bottom. And then it's a very stressful day, and you normally mess up your task.
That's
because
my
of
concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then don't do it. Stay where you are. Stay above. If everyone moves over there, then you go over there, and you just stay with everyone. Okay. And then with 5 minutes to go, you're in position. Off they go, and then you can just enjoy the rest of the task. Basically, by following the gaggle in front of you, they'll be showing you the thermals. You'll have stragglers, others showing you the thermals. The worst thing you can do is be the bottom one at the start, because everyone is using you, whereas you should be using the others. So the aim is to have fun and just stay up as high as you can. Okay? You don't need to be at the front, you just need to be high.
I'm 50 kilos, I'm not going to be at the front.
Good.
You need to be the king on the chessboard. and all of the other guys are okay, that pawn's gone, that one's gone, that one's gone. So it's just like playing chess, and you're the king controlling all of those others.
Well, the queen's better than the king, isn't it?
Whichever way you prefer.
The king just lurks about. He just want to get attacked.
You mentioned fear, and like suddenly getting that irrational fear, and I've obviously learned the ground's quite painful, the sky's fine. But what about when you get that moment of like, I'm really high and I'm suddenly really fearful? Like, this feels like a thing you can teach us something about.
I don't know if I can, because I had a bout of it last summer. I've been learning to glide, and then I ended up, gliding under cloud streets, and on a sailplane you just push the stick forward and off you go. I went back to paragliding and I just shat my pants, because you get near a cloud and it starts moving about, and you might get sucked into it. You're pushing speed, you're really working it. I mean, it is quite a full-on experience, really, when you think about it. But I guess the mind's a funny thing, isn't it? If you get that in your head that it's unsafe, then your body reacts, and you'll go into fight or flight, and you'll get nervous, and you should probably land, because that's not a good headspace to be thinking. Particularly as we get older, we know that reaction times don't go down massively, but the ability to think up novel responses does, so new responses. So a guy called Dr. Matt Wilkes did lots of studies on reserve deployments. He said basically we should all have our harnesses and parachutes set up in the same way, because it's very hard to learn to throw in a new way, And if you're going down a zip wire or doing it in real life, and what you're doing isn't working, you're likely just to keep doing it and hope it will, because you're stressed, and your ability to think, hang on, stop, this isn't working, let's try something else, doesn't happen. So just to recognise that that is a thing, and therefore to practice things like that. So take off, check where your reserve is. Don't throw it, but check where it is and what movement you do. If you go on an SIV course, they'll teach you things like doing little spirals, then reversing out, and the wing goes behind you, and then it shoots forward, and that's to help you, learn how to correctly stop the dive. It's called catch the cat. So those sorts of things are, I'd say, super helpful, because then if you are in that sort of fearful state, at least your body will know how to react to things. Yeah.
I think you have to accept it's totally normal. Everyone has fear when you start to learn paragliding, because although they're easy to fly, but they're quite hard to master, really to really fly them well. So when you're in your early stages of flying, you've got so many gremlins on your shoulders, you've got so many reasons to be fearful, because you don't really know how to fly the wing. And that's the beauty of our sport, is that you've got a lifetime of learning ahead, which is why it's really important that you fly safe wings in safe conditions when you're inexperienced, and you build that experience. And as you do more training, you go on to SIV, you go on to actually start to understand behaviour of paraglider beyond the ground handling, taking off and landing into wind. When you actually start to feel the point of spin, the point of stall, the way it collapses, and how to deal with all of that, as your knowledge grows, those irrational fears go away. And you get to a point where when you get experienced and you start, like when I get scared in the sky now, it's serious, because I'm scared for a reason, and if I can't identify it, I'll normally identify it and take action to get away. But when I was a beginner pilot, like everyone, you have irrational fears, because you don't know how you're going to react if the wing collapses. So you're not going to know how you're going to react if you stall or spin the wing, and then exactly what the wing's going to do in those situations. So those fears are totally rational, and they're overcome by training, practice, SIV, and repeating this continuously.
I think it was Judy said to me once, if you're flying and you get scared and you're feeling scared, ask yourself rationally, is there a good reason for me being scared? Is it rough? Is there a good reason? Well, yes, there is. Then do something about it, go and land. But if you go, well, not really, it's not that rough, there's not Q-nims about, there's no reason for me feeling scared, then give yourself a slap and get on with it. There's no reason for it. You've asked yourself the question and you answered it. There's no reason. It's just because it is scary. You know, it's pretty alien, isn't it, being up there? I mean, you know, we're not meant to fly, we're meant to walk about. The birds must be thinking this walking about on the ground is weird. They're meant to be up there in the sky, you know, it's the same.
Yeah, if you take that, like, I flew in Switzerland last year in March, and it was a booming day, and I hadn't flown for 6 months, and it was me and Seb, and I'd done an interview with Kriegel Maurer of the X-Alps, and we flew with him, and I just got pasted. And I landed, and I said, that was fucking horrific. And he said, well, you know, yeah, you got scared, but you should have just, when I get scared, I leave the situation that's scaring me, I go away, I reassess, and I move on. And I don't have that ability to deal with the fear, compartmentalise it, move away, and then carry on. And some people do, and Julie does, and, you know, the more experience you get, you can. And I think Mark's tactic is great if you're able to do that. But if you try that and it doesn't work, then you are probably overloaded. If you haven't been able to rationalise it, it's probably safest just to look after yourself and get to a safe place and land. Because, like I said, you won't be in the right. You won't be on top of things as you'd like to be. You might disagree. You might think, no, I'll just battle. But it's not very nice flying when you're petrified for more than 10 minutes. So why bother?
It doesn't always last that long, though,
yeah.
does it? Yeah. You know, and from my point of view, the time I found out that you still felt a bit of fear, was like, oh, okay.
I remember flying in the World Championships about 20, 30 years ago, and you'd be flying along, and there'd be someone would throw their reserve, and they'd be landing on some spine. You'd go, oh my god, this is really scary, and then you'd have a goldfish memory, and you'd be like, oh, flying again, and then another one would go, and you carry on. So, you know, we've all got the ability to have cognitive dissonance and just disengage from really sort of, you know, if you're flying in strong air and the reserve's coming out, it's probably not a great place to be flying, but we can all, you know, I don't know what I'm saying there. It's just, we all get affected by it in different ways, and we find our own ways to stay safe.
What about singing? I can't be the only one that sings.
Yeah, definitely. And shouting, swearing,
No.
No, just singing.
No, never swearing at my glider, we're a team.
Yeah. You swear at the thermal though? Like if it's not... I do.
I don't know, I swear in general perhaps occasionally, but it's not...
I swear. I think it's definitely useful to give yourself some positive self-talk as well, because most of us are probably wired to beat ourselves up. So, you know, if you're doubting what you're doing, you can just say, we're doing all right here, we're safe, 2,000 feet, things are good. And reframing is really useful for cross-country flying, especially if you're getting low, to say, I'm doing a bit of research, getting a bit low, I'm in the right area, there'll probably be a climb here, I'm just going to explore a bit more, because, you know, that tension.
What do you mean by reframing?
So if you're getting into a mindset of thinking, oh my god, I'm going to low, I fucked it up again, everyone's left me for dead, you know, reframe it, go, caught myself doing that, I'm in deep, jockey uses that, I'm in deep, I'm doing some research, make that call on the radio, you know, feels like you're doing something sort of intentional, and you've got low because you're in what you think is the right area, so continue that sense of purpose. And I think it's important as well on takeoff, if you're getting ready to fly, just say it out loud, like rally drivers sort of constantly they're going, this coming up, be your own co-driver, talk through what you're doing. Okay, I think this is going to happen now, I'm going to get ready to launch, if that guy climbs I'm going to take off. You might look a bit mad, but you can do it out loud, or or just in your head, just to give yourself a narrative and an explanation of what you're doing and why, and then that will help reinforce why you're doing it, and it'll stop your mind from jumping about, going, I'm not good enough to take off now, I'll get in people's way. It'll just keep a stream going.
We had a guy on SIB who literally sounded like an army sergeant. So all the way down, he's like, hold, and go! It sounded like listening to a Red Arrow or something on the radio, and he was so strict with himself. And he did it all the way through takeoff as well.
He was flying, saying this whilst he was flying.
Yeah, because obviously we watched the GoPro videos back in the cockpit, and he was just shouting at himself the entire time. Even during takeoff, he had a really bad takeoff, and then he just started shouting at himself and talking himself through everything, and they were absolutely blinded after that. So Thought
I mean,
shout at yourself.
yeah, and that works for him. He's sort of had that experience probably of a drill sergeant, like
That's
treating
what
him that way.
Hugh does that, I've heard him.
When I last did SOV, yeah, so alpha male, I'm just shouting. But last time I did SOV, I was going up in the bus in Annecy, and I had to literally say to myself, right, I am in the French Alps on a sunny day, doing a sport I love. This will make me safer. I am not about to be shot at in Ukraine by a bunch of Russians. This is a choice, and I'm going to make the most of it. And that really helps, because I was shitting myself, and I thought, for fuck's sake, I'm not, fighting for my life here, or, in a really desperate position. I'm in a very lucky position, and this is going to make it safer, not more dangerous. So, yeah. But I have to do things like that because I'm a bundle of nerves, and then that gets in the way, doesn't it? Yeah.
Didn't you fly like 100 kilometres and you could only turn left or something?
That's not a good example.
That's quite cool.
Well, fear came into that as well, because I'd taken off at the Malverns, and it was quite a windy day, and on the West Malverns there's actually no official bottom landing, and my mistake was to not properly pack up my glider properly before. So with a higher aspect ratio wing, correct me if I'm wrong, but I find them quite hard to do all the Cobra launch stuff and all the rest of it. Do you? You're right with it.
I don't do Cobra launching.
I just ended up tripping up in the lines and going splat. But it had sort of started getting inflated, and so I laid it outside on, and in the process of that I got a knot. So when I took off, I was plucked into the air with right brake on, and so I couldn't top land, it was too windy, too dangerous. So I flew out and then thought, well, fuck, I'm not landing down there because there's no land and it's trees and horrible. So I thought, well, I'll just thermal out and land over the back. And that that thought process continued for the next yeah. It's not, it was not sensible at all. I wouldn't say it's sensible. But I reframed it saying, well, I've flown comp wings in the 90s, this is not as bad as that. This is fine, this is okay. And it was actually better to thermal against the knot than with. I don't know why.
Was it in the brakes?
Yeah, it was in the brake fan. It was pulling on brakes. So when you're at trim, you could just about go straight. It's turning a bit, but yeah, it's an ozone glider. Dodgy.
Probably trimmed it better.
Yeah.
If you don't know, what is your strong wind launch technical choice?
I just bring it up like normal. I'm moving towards the wing, and I release the A risers basically as soon as the trailing edge leaves the ground, and I hit the brakes early so that the later you leave hitting the brakes, it goes through the power, up here. If you hit the brakes late there, you just create a massive amount of lift and get plucked. So I just let the trailing edge come off the ground, and then I'm immediately on the brakes as I'm going towards the wing, and it just, so by the time it's at the top, it's half kind of stalled, and then I let it fly.
Do you ever go slightly off kilter, so it's
like trashed in all the fences up here, don't
but if the wings, if you're straight upwind of the wing, if you go slightly side on and it comes up that way, it takes a bit of the energy out of it.
Yeah, no, there are other ways. But now I've found that coming off the A risers as soon as the trailing edge is off the ground, and you've got to make sure the wing, obviously, if you do it prematurely or the wing is not coming up fast enough, it's just going to stall and drag in front of you. So, but with Enzos and comp wings in windy takeoffs, that's what I do.
Can I just talk a little bit more about ridges, just to finish off, and then if there are any more questions. So just again, going back to understanding and understanding conditions, and this being a long process. Over the last month, we've had really different conditions. So did anyone fly on those really nice, really cold, northerly days about 4 weeks ago? We had a series of them. It was over the weekend, and then I think Monday was really good here. It was cold air. There were people climbing out at 9 in the morning. It's a really good air mass. The French record was done the day later, so it's an incredible air mass. You could see London, like you could see the skyline from Cloud Base here. And then the last few days, someone flying the last few days? Yeah, what's it been like? Grumpy, exactly. So, same hill, still Bo Peep, but Bo Peep and Far, but grumpy air. So high pressure, and I think just to explain what's happening on ridges, when it's a high pressure day, the air basically gets forced over the hills. It doesn't really want to go. So it can feel really windy on the takeoff and there'll be not much lift because the air's just coming along, it's damming a bit here at the bottom, there might not be much wind there, and there's quite a strong wind gradient, wind gets a lot stronger to the top, and people are, you know, barely above ridge top height and getting battered about quite a lot until about 1 o'clock, and then the sun's high enough, the temperature's high enough that these bullety thermals come and start plucking people off and thrashing people about a bit. Okay, so it's not dangerous to fly, but that's what the air is doing on a high pressure day. So if you're looking at a forecast and you're seeing that you're not getting cues till 1-2 o'clock and it's a northeasterly day or an easterly day, then be mindful you might have those kind of conditions. If you're waking up, if you haven't got the extra duvet on and you're waking up quite warm, it's likely to be a bit stable. If you're waking up and it's cold and there's a frost, you're more likely to have a day like this where the pressure's a bit lower and the air is more willing, it's less grumpy. So the wind will be more on and off on takeoff, depending on whether the thermals are blocking the wind or not, and you'll have people climbing out really early on. So that could be a good first thing to get used to as you get into soaring with a view to thermaling out, just assessing what the air is going to be like today, looking at the forecast, getting into SCUTs if you can really be bothered, but SkySight and RASP does all that for you. It will tell you what's going on, and then testing it out, seeing if you're right or wrong. Any questions on that? Russell, puzzled. Do you agree with that or not?
I totally agree with that. Yeah, totally agree with it. I'm just puzzled generally.
Maybe you could wrap up by giving us some do's and don'ts, just a few.
Can I just make one point about thermaling?
Yeah.
Because what Wagger showed us how we try and sniff out the core, and that 4-second rule is a rule that I've always used and I still to this day use. Sometimes you don't know whether to turn left or right, so just make your best guess, just from whatever you feel. If there's no one else obviously thermaling around you, if you're discovering the thermal. And use the information from your first 360 to then try, what I always try and like to do, especially here lower down on the hills to climb out of the South Downs, is to try and find the upwind edge of the thermal. Try and find the leading edge of the thermal. Okay, how do you know you've hit the leading edge of the thermal? Because after that you just drop out into the sinking air in front of it. Okay, but that way at least that gives you one solid boundary. Right, that's my leading edge, upwind. Then you can then quickly turn around, come back into the thermal and start sniffing out in different areas, because often that upwind edge is also kind of climbing a bit strong, and maybe not as strong as the core, but it's climbing stronger than the rest of the thermal. Yeah. So sniff out the upwind edge. If you fall out of that, you can come back in and you've got one solid place where I don't want to go more upwind of that, and that helps you then hook into the core, and then you're in the core as well, because often if you're in 3 metre and you're going around, there's always maybe a 4 metre somewhere else. So I think a good technique once you can thermal is find the upwind edge.
And get someone else to find it for you is even better. So if you're doing that, you've opened up and you're going upwind and you watch that person. That's it, turn.
Yeah, what I like to do with Martin is keep Martin on my outside, and as he falls out the front, wave.
So with the diagram I did earlier, with the coming in and sort of lots of circles and perhaps moving upwind, or I think that's, for me, I do that when I'm low. So you come in and you do your circle, you've had a bit of lift, so you're probably going to get lift all the way around. You might not be in the best bit, but you do that and you stay on the same spot and the thermal comes to you. Or you can open it up just a little bit into wind, because you're low. You can't afford to go out the front. You need everything. So I'm not going to have the best, but I'm going to have something all the way around. And it comes to you or drifts to you because you haven't moved over the spot on the ground. You might open it up a little bit each time and it drifts to you. Until you've actually found the other side of it, you may have gained a few 100 feet or maybe 1,000 feet, and now you're more confident that you've mapped it and you can look upwind a bit more. The other one where you fly straighter and go out the other side of it, you probably do when you're higher. You've got more time, the thermal is going to be bigger, more established, and sometimes you sort of go along and it's and you think, hold, and it that's where it is. You see what I mean? Sometimes it dips a little bit and then it gets stronger again.
It kind of normally always dips a little bit, doesn't it?
So you get a good bit, it dips and then gets much better or a bit better. Yeah. I don't know, I mean, Hugh and I fly a lot together and I think I possibly push too much out the front. But sometimes it really, on good days when you're high, it works.
Yeah. And the reason, it was easy to forget this, but you have to fly in a different way, up high to low down. When you're low down, you've got far less options because of the necking of the thermal. You're not going to fly over 5 fields going up in lift at 200 feet. It just doesn't happen, unfortunately. But high up, you can fly over 5 fields and be in lift, and that's because of the shape of the thermal. Yes. Oh yeah, thinking about climbing out as well and going to the upwind edge. If you're up high, if you're near the top, you're at such an advantage because everyone else is a marker, and you just watch the angles, and that's apparently quite a big thing in competitions. It's about looking at the angles and making sure you're always dominant in terms of the angle. You can always glide to someone at all times, whether you're on glide or on thermal. So if you're up high and near the top, you've got a great advantage. And as soon as the guy out front starts to plummet, you go. That's it. That's your cut-off point. There's no one climbing up faster than the upwind, so that's it. Forget about it. Forget about the hill. Off you go.
Yeah. So another thing is, you're cross-countrying in the UK. You've glided off somewhere. You've got low. I mean, we say what we call it low. 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet. You're feeling lowish. You know there's nobody else, no other paragliders with you because you've been flying. There's nobody else about. You're at 300 or 400 feet and you find a weak climb. I sometimes just look at the wing. Don't look at the ground at all. Just look at the wing and listen to the vario. I'm not interested in the ground, I'm interested in this piece of lift. Okay, I'm round and round in this. If you're looking at the ground, you're getting distracted. Oh, is it coming off of the field? None of that. Nothing else matters but staying in this piece of lift for as long as possible, because if you stay off the ground for another 5 minutes, something else will present itself. So just look at the glider. Obviously don't get yourself dizzy or anything, but look at the glider and listen to the lift. Okay, close your eyes.
Is that what you did when you went over that forest at 100 feet?
Yeah, I closed my eyes, yeah. I mean, after a while you get...
screamed out at 4 metre just behind him.
Definitely make sure there's a landing.
Yeah, closing your eyes might be a bit too much, but if you're closing your eyes, you're feeling and you're listening to the vario. It's like, you know you're not going to hit anybody. There's nobody there. There's nothing to hit. This is what counts. You just listen to the vario, look at the wing, and then 5 minutes later you've gained a few more 100 feet. You can go somewhere else. I suppose closing your eyes is not ideal. I mean, there might be a third somewhere, but do you see what I mean? Forget the ground. No. This is where it's at. Look at the wing and just listen to it, and away you go.
Couldn't you have told me that 15 years ago?
Don't do that in a camera live.
Took me ages to learn that one.
Close your eyes, Dick. Close your eyes.
Yeah, you obviously notice nobody else is around, but yeah.
Do you have a story?
No, I don't think so.
What about your longest?
Going back to the original questions, for example, it being easy in France, harder here, or things to think about, particular ridges to fly from, where to travel. What are your kind of thoughts now? Are you going to do anything differently, or what are you taking away that you might try out from what's being discussed?
I really like what you said about talking to yourself in like a positive voice in your head. Like, yeah, I'm here, but I won't be here for long. I'll just pop up and then I'll go over there. Not like, fuck, I'm crap. Yeah. And like you talk really badly about yourself in your head sometimes when you get yourself in a crap position. very good.
I like your bowls and spurs thing, because the spurs often do work for thermals, and but yeah, the bowls where you'll be for soaring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lawrence is a classic. It's this massive bowl, and you think, wow, and it never works. You have to fly out over the town where it's actually collecting and releasing.
I think I'm taking away how much safer it's going to be just to get out and fly XC than hang around with everyone on the dike.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, the benefit of Southeast Wales or any inland sites is you don't have the sea breeze coming in. We haven't talked about the sea breeze, but
is it possible actually just to talk a little bit about convergence and how to utilise it?
Yeah, I've got a couple of videos, but maybe it's just best just to dispel the myth that it's much use to us. Sea breeze fronts are of not really much use to paraglider pilots because the winds we fly in aren't enough to create a really strong line between the inland air and the converging sea air. And as the sea air comes in, it's generally a bit of a damp squid. It's basically just crap air coming in, and it might kick off a few bits of thermals reluctantly as it comes in and undercuts them. But yeah, and generally, as Mark says, it sneaks up on you and it overtakes you. The speeds we fly, if this is the coast and I'm flying towards Kent, I'll be flying along going, yeah, I mean, convergence, great, and then boom, it's past me, and I can't get my speed. I can't cut across. Yeah. Sailplane pilots use it in a different way, where it's a strong opposing wind, and it builds this wall where the sea air can't actually penetrate that far in, so the air's being shoveled up it, and then they can blast along it. And hang glider pilots use it really well as well. So Steve Cook's done some amazing flights. I'm not saying you can't use it. You can. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. Climbing up the side of a cloud and flying to Lewis is stunning. You know, so you know, in the short term, they're amazing things for 20, 30 k's, but I've never successfully flown it for longer than 20, 30 k's, and I've tried a lot because they're amazing things. And yeah, being up the side of the wall of a cloud, but just watch it because it's moving this way, it's moving sideways all the time, so you have to keep an angle away from it all the time.
Even Stevie Cook says the sea breeze will get you in the end.
Yeah,
it'll catch you out. And
you'll see a line on RASP showing this amazing convergence line, but it doesn't show you the fact it does this in the valleys, and it'll rush in and you know, in one valley and just cut off the area.
If it overtakes you and you're then in the seaward side, is that then quite rough? I mean, is it?
It can be a bit rough on the dividing line,
okay.
And then once you're in the sea air, it's like flying cabin on a crap day. Yeah.
Question for you. We've all been around a while, but if you could talk to your younger self, each one of you, and you were on your paragliding journey starting, whether it be ridge soaring or what would the one tip you give yourself now after all the experience you've got?
Great question.
Who are you asking?
Anyone?
Anyone's happy to answer?
Don't crash. No, seriously, don't hurt yourself.
So, priority.
That's definitely the one, yeah. But I think what you've all done, is either by choice or by luck, is you've come into a really nice place with an amazing flying community. You've got beautiful, experienced pilots that are willing to share their knowledge and profit from that. Fly with the best pilots you can, and take in all the information you can, because there's so much information out there. Once you've been flying for 20 or 30 years, it all seems like you can bring it down into something very small and simple, but actually there's a huge amount of information to take in and experience to gain, and you're in a very strong position here with the community that you've got, with the school that you've got here. So I'd make full use and profit of it.
I'd say fly as much as you can. It's an alien experience. It doesn't come naturally. Fly as much as you can, as long as you can, thermal as much as you can. It wants to be like getting on a bicycle. Just get on it and do it. I remember when I was flying a lot, I'd taken off and took off and I'm flying along, looking at my glider, feeling really relaxed. It's like, I suppose I better look at the hill, hadn't I? You know, I'm that relaxed at flying, I haven't actually looked at the hill and where I'm going. It's just like, you know, it wasn't negligence, it was just really comfortable with what I was doing. I'm not quite like it now, but you know, to just get really comfortable in being in the air. Do it loads.
I wish I'd subscribed to Cross Country earlier. I mean, I didn't come onto that till how much I could have learned. It's quite. I think what Russ says is true. Is when you think about what we do, and again, you know, the fact that we're flying from these tiny hills with swifts, and you know, the swifts have all arrived, and we're trying to scrape out, fly away. You know, if you've got a day job that's not involved in paragliding, it's such an amazing contrast to your life, isn't it? And the pressures of what you do. So, and there are some incredible people. Some of my best friends are from paragliding. So, and you know, people you wouldn't expect to meet. You meet. I think just don't be a dick. No, I'm not saying I've been a dick, but when you go to competitions, people can behave in a bit of a dickish way and be quite demanding and expect things, or do you know what I mean? Get into that sort of service culture thing. And I think in paragliding, we're more friendly and community minded, and we have to be, because we're kind of flying at the whim of landowners and in quite incredible places. So yeah, don't know where I'm going with that one. Yeah.
I'd say there are no rules. When it comes to paragliding, there are no rules. You can say generally that thing gives a thermal, but it might not today, whereas tomorrow it might. There are no rules. I mean, I remember being on a cross country, getting 300-400 feet, going over a field and catching a thermal. Popping a couple of 360s, look down, there's a wood, there's a green field with a horse in it and a river running through the middle of the field. I've got to climb. There's no way you'd go there for a thermal. There are no rules. Anything's possible. You know, oh, there are no climbs in the sea air. Wrong. Generally they're not, but sometimes there are.
Yeah, you can scrape up and out sometimes.
It's not written. Everything is... Yeah.
Just to clarify it for you guys. There are no rules. Ignore everything that Hugh just said.
It's not rules, this is all guidance. It's all a wealth of experience. There are no hard and fast rules. Anything can happen.
The end. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Based on what we've talked about, if you've got any suggestions of articles you'd like to see written in cross country, please do let me know. And yeah, it's really interesting to know kind of what you want to know more about, understand. We've got loads of people who can write well. Yeah.